Hopefully it's recording. Okay. So thank you. So we'll continue. So last 13 weeks we have been discussing from Manasiksha. This is the 14th week. We are still in the first verse. So I hope uh, you are not feeling that why we are not going to the second verse soon. So uh, we will definitely because I think the first verse has probably the longest commentaries. Subsequent verses don't have that long commentaries, so I'm sure we'll be able to cover the rest of the verses. And especially when we go little later verses, they have very short commentaries, and some of them don't write any commentaries also. So hope you will remain little patient. We will definitely cover the subsequent verses little bit more fast, but I'm sure these discussions are valuable that we are having. So through the questions that you ask and the discussions that come up and the points that various devotees share, I'm sure uh, we all will be benefited. So so I think it will be mutually useful for all of us. So we'll continue. We have been discussing from the first verse of Manasiksha, where we have been discussing the last few weeks from the commentary of His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj. So we started. We will chant the verse, the first verse, and then we will continue further. Gurau Goshte Goshtalayishu Sujane Bhusuragane Swamantre Shrinamni Vrajanava Yuvadvandvasharane Sada Dambam Hitva Kururatim Apurvamatitaram Ayeswantarbrataschaturabhiyache Dritapada. So here Srila Raghunath Das Goswami starts this Manasiksha by addressing his mind in a very affectionate way as brother. And then he says that, oh my dear mind, my dear brother, please give up this damba. So please give up this damba and develop uh, unprecedented and excessive attachment to Gurau, Goshte, Goshtalayishu, Sujane, Bhusuragane, Swamantre, Shrinamni, Vrajanavayuvat, Dvandvasharane. So these 8 things. And he says that I fall at your feet and I beseech you with sweet words, please accept this advice of mine. So we have last few weeks we have discussed in detail about the aspect of addressing the mind, how we identify with the mind all the time, and therefore we need to actually learn to see the difference between mind and the self, and addressing this mind helps us develop this clarity that how the soul is different from the subtle body, like that. And last week we started discussing about this next theme, which is Sada Dambam Hitva, always give up pride. So I will do a quick recap of what we have seen the last week. So Maharaj started by telling that uh, we all are victims of the false program installed in our mind called karma, or our past experiences, which are pushing us to act in particular ways. So because of which we suffer, we make allow we because of us other people also suffer, and therefore he says therefore Raghunath Das Goswami says, please give up this pride. This is the first instruction. And he says, he uses the word sada to indicate that you have to make persistent effort to give up this pride, because it keeps on coming in various different ways. And then he gives about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's analysis of what this is. Um, in essence, it means any manifestation of Maya, and he described that in the Christian theology, there is a personified evil, but in our Vedic understanding, that personified evil is nothing but our conditioned material mind. So he says, the mind keeps on flattering us, charming us, saying that we can do anything and everything like that. So therefore, in order to progress, the first thing is to give up this uh, mm, pride, or the influence of the materially contaminated mind. So then he says, then he quotes that how there are the 6 aspects of this pride, even though some of them may seem little similar, they may be subtly different, but I think we basically understand. First is Maya, or illusion. Our tendency to become illusioned, seeing something, thinking something else, uh, acting on perceived injustice, perceived various things which may not necessarily be true also. uh. It's very difficult to overcome this. Then he talks about the second is chala. We want to deceive others, um, and the biggest, and every time we try to deceive others, try to show others what we are not, actually it is a form of self deception. That's what Maharaj writes. Then the third is kapatata. Kapatata means hypocrisy or pretense. And fourth is avidya, ignorance. Fifth is kutinati, which is plain dishonesty. Oh, you did it? Oh, I didn't do it. Dishonesty. And then the sixth is corruptness, a corrupt, crooked mind. So these are the 6 aspects of pride that we saw. And Raghunath Das Goswami, when he says Sada Dambam Hitva, he says give up all these tendencies like that. So, um, and Maharaj says that sometimes we may even take up to some spiritual practice to become famous. And sometimes we study the scriptures, quote them to serve our own purposes. Sometimes we may get carried away. We don't purposefully read scriptures, as last time Vrajvinod Shyam Prabhu also brought out this point. We don't purposefully read or study scriptures for that, but sometimes we may misquote sometimes scriptures just to justify things. Sometimes you can do that. We tend to do that. Okay, and um, and Maharaj says that if you want to have a taste for spiritual life, then we should give up this propensity for deception. And then he quotes about how Prabhupada names his commentary as Bhagavad Gita as it is. Bhagavad Gita as it is means, he says that we are not trying to interpret the scriptures the way we want to please or benefit ourselves. So it's not that you come to some conclusions. Many times what we do is we get convinced of doing particular things. Then we go to folio to check and collect some verses, collect some Prabhupada quotes where he has supported this. Sometimes we tend to do that. Uh, uh, Instead of studying the scriptures and gaining some understanding based on Prabhupada's writings and or Acharya's writings, uh, and then becoming very convinced about it and then following it, we many times tend to do the opposite thing. We have certain attachments, certain things, and then we approach the scriptures to see where all the scriptures have recommended it. And generally, because we are searching for a justification for our practice, we may tend to get some quotes and verses, but because uh, we are approaching it from a very uh, biased perspective, we will never be able to understand the context of that verse or the context of that quote. So many times we may take them out of context or um, uh, out of context also. So therefore, uh, the right approach is that while we are studying scriptures, some understanding comes from the writings of the acharyas or from the text itself, and then actually uh, we may get inspired and then we act on it. It should not be the other way around. Whatever I think is right, then I search for some justification from the scriptures. Many times we may tend to do that. So therefore he says honesty is the first rule in order to remove this tendency to deceive. So honesty means trying to introspect and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Is it because I am attached? Is that why I am searching for a quote? Uh, or is it that I genuinely want to know what is the right thing to do? So therefore, that honesty is very important. And then he gives the example of this Muslim who was drinking and doing all kinds of nonsense, and the mullah came to him and told, "Hey, look, what are you doing? Don't you read Quran? Quran says that you should not do all these things." And that person says, "Oh, what do you know? You are a mullah. You don't know the Quran." He says this Quran verse. He quotes that verse and he says it says you should eat, drink, and have fun. And the mullah says, Baba, that is only first half of that verse. The next half says that if you eat, drink, and have fun, then you will go to hell. And um, the, the that person says that well, actually, no one can follow the scriptures 100%. Uh, Different people can follow it to different extent. I can follow only 50%, and I wish to follow the first 50% of this verse, which says, "Eat, drink, and have fun." Hmm? See, we may not be so gross, uh, but the subtle tendency may be there, and it may manifest like what we discussed before. We may have certain inclinations, and or sometimes um, we may say that where did Prabhupada say that we should not eat chocolate or something like that. uh, so we are already attached and we want some Prabhupada quotes, or we may even find some Prabhupada pastime where Prabhupada actually ate a chocolate. Maybe it could be there. And there is a pastime where Prabhupada, while traveling in train, he flicked a samosa from a samosa seller and he ate it. There is a pastime like that. And we may justify or like that, it is all right, like that. So then he also spoke about the other example where he found a woman who said that the best chapter that I like in Bhagavad Gita is 16th chapter. When he asked why, he says this very clearly gives the explanation of who is a demon and who is a devotee. And she says that from this it is very clear to me that I am a devotee and everyone else is a demon, like that. And Maharaj says that the mind is the best lawyer, uh, and the best lawyer is the one who can lie very convincingly. So the mind, we are living with the best lawyer who can lie very convincingly and make us feel that we are always right and the other person is always wrong. So Raghunath Das Goswami says that until we cast away this damba manifesting itself through this deception, then we will never be able to understand or progress on the spiritual life, like that. Therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami says, Sada dambam hitva, always be on God and remember that the mind is forever willing to deceive us. And then Maharaj spoke about that how damba means identifying with the material body and the material mind. And what is the role of the material mind? The material mind plays various roles. Hmm? Like we identify, I am a student, I am a brahmachari, I am a devotee, I am a, the various roles that we play. And therefore, Maharaj says that we do have a split personality. Huh? So in our split personality, as sadhaka's typical split personality is, what the Shastras recommend is ideal behavior, and what our actual behavior influenced by the three modes is. This is like a classic sadhaka split personality. Sometimes he is able to, when the association is powerful, when he is super inspired and spiritually doing well, he is able to act according to the recommendations of the Shastras. But other times when he is spiritually weak, not having good association, he may act being impelled by the um, conditioned mind. So, like that. Sometimes people start doubting whether they feel something or not and who feels it. So, Maharaj basically says that, the same point that he addressed in the previous section of addressing the mind, that how it becomes very difficult to actually see that we are not this mind. It's very difficult in practical actually acting. It becomes very difficult actually, because we identify with particular roles so strongly. When that is shaken little bit, we become so disturbed. Like, I mean, to be honest, even you know last night something happened and it carried over today morning, and the whole day I have been quite upset and agitated, uh, because I was identifying with a particular role, and when someone challenged me on that, when someone shook that, it was so difficult to handle. uh, so that upadhi, identification with that upadhi is so strong. So uh, it's difficult, it takes time. So um, therefore Maharaj says that, he gives the example of how when he was traveling in a train, uh, he was trying to explain about reincarnation to another person, and then he told, look, you remember how you were while you were a child, you remember how you were while you were an boy, you are an adult, you are an old man. So you remember all that, but your body has significantly changed, but something which has not changed is your soul. uh, so like that he was trying to explain. The man, after hearing this for a long time, he mentioned that, well, uh, he says, I don't think it was me, it was a different soul, you know, who was residing in that youthful body and that child body. It was a different soul. So it was so difficult for him to even understand the eternality of soul, and that the body is changing but the person remains the same. These things were very difficult to understand. And then Maharaj says that the mind is the source of pride. It makes us play every role possible. In the long run, we try to work these prideful roles into the spiritual realm also. There is a very important point we have to understand. Even being on the spiritual path and theoretically accepting that we are servants, and any authentic spiritual path teaches this position, we don't always reconcile this within. So Maharaj says that even though we know theoretically Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Das Das Anudas, but it becomes very difficult to internalize it and reconcile this internally. And Maharaj says that, even Bhagavad Gita starts when it talks about the items of knowledge in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It starts with Amanitvam Adambitvam. So, Amanitvam means to give up the passion for being honored by others, and Adambitvam means, uh, you know, not being able to deceive or delude ourselves. So these two are are mentioned as the first two essential points, two essential symptoms of knowledge. And then Maharaj says that, uh, in spiritual life, one of the very prominent ways that we may tend to deceive ourselves is to expect miracles to happen. So that's what he says, that many times we expect a miracle to happen after we perform our devotional service, especially during chanting or after chanting. So he says that, mm, but miracles does not necessarily prove that the spiritual path is true. Like, I remember someone approached Prabhupada and reporter, and he said, Swamiji, can you show me some miracle? And Prabhupada said that, look, all these people who are uh, following me, they were like they had the most wretched habits in this whole world. They were hippies, they were addicted to various different things. uh, but now, after accepting the process, they have given up everything. They wake up early in the morning, uh, you know 3 o'clock, 3:30, and they chant the holy names. They don't eat meat, they don't have illicit connections, they have given up gambling and everything, intoxication. So this is my miracle, like that. But that person was actually expecting some miracle, like, can you materialize some object, a gold chain or something like that. So, and then Prabhupada talks about the famous saint in South India who materializes many things. So Maharaj says that these things are not at all proof of true spiritual experience. So uh, he says that, so many times we get deceived and deluded. He's talking about adambitvam. He says that this is very much possible, that we may expect miracles like that. And sometimes we may think that, okay, if this path is right, then I must see God. God must come in front of me. Or if my chanting is right, or if this process of chanting is right, um, um, then I should be able to. Krishna should be. Uh, then let's say Madan Mohan's garland should fall down, like it fell down for Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Like that, we may have such expectations. But Maharaj says that to have these kind of expectations is actually, mm, and a manifestation of pride, uh, impatience. That even though I am not as qualified as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, I am not even close. But I think that the Agnya Mala should fall for me. uh. So one devotee I was sharing, uh, uh, you know, one devotee just told me just last week or maybe around 10 days back, that when he was standing in front of Vrindavan Vihari and praying for something, he was in two minds as to what should happen, this thing or that thing. And suddenly a flower from the turban of Vrindavan Vihari fell down. So uh, he thought that, oh, this means Vrindavan Vihari is indicating this. And then he went to Madan Mohanji and he thought, okay, if really I should be doing this, then a flower from Madan Mohan's turban should also fall down. And of course, it did not fall down. It is, that does not mean that, so we are not so elevated that the Supreme Lord will become the puppet in our hand and make the flower from the turban fall down. So, so to expect that, at my level of devotional development, these kind of miracles should happen, the Supreme Lord should dance according to my tunes, is actually a kind of pride, like that. So, and this is what the Sahajiyas do. Maharaj explains about the Sahajiyas, where uh, you know, they show some symptoms of ecstasy and then they go out and smoke cigarette, like that. Waiting for what is natural is the way the acharyas describe, and it is not easy. So, so certain things, Krishna, Bhakti Rasam Sindhu says that, of the 6 benefits of bhakti, Sri Krishna Akarshini, the ability to completely control Krishna, manifests in a person only at the stage of prema. So while we are at the stage of anartha nivritti, Why should we think that Krishna would be controlled like that? And that's exactly what the Sahajiyas think. The Sahajiyas, they become impatient, or a sadhaka may also become impatient. I deserve more than what I have. I need my spiritual experience right here and right now. Many times people say that, Prabhuji, you know, chanting में मजा नहीं आ रहा है, मतलब, or in whatever spiritual practice, you know. So that is actually, that happens at the stage of ruchi. But before ruchi comes nishta, steady practice. So and that is expected of us. We have to try to steady our practice, and ruchi is something which is awarded subsequently as a reward for our steady practice of devotional service. But many times we expect that I will uh, I will chant very steadily, or I will practice very steadily after I get some taste for it, like that. So he says that these are all various aspects of pride, um, and then he says that, I think probably this is where we ended our discussion last time, if my memory is right. So I think this is where we ended. So at this point of time, I will pause for a few minutes to see uh, if there are any quick comments, questions based on what we discussed last time. So Srinivas Prasad Prabhu, I'm unmuting you. You can please ask. Yes, Prabhu, you can please ask. Haribol. Haribol. Oh, I can't hear you. Haribol. Okay. So, Prabhu, I'm sorry, I'll mute you for now and then see if someone else has any quick comments or questions. I don't see any hands. So I think we will continue with this discussion, and then we will again open up for some more questions a little later when we cover some portions. Okay, Radha Damodar Prabhu, you just raised your hands at the right time. So I am unmuting you. You can please ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandos Pranam Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
We were discussing about the dishonesty or deception part. So you said go find out some quotes from the scripture to justify our dishonest behavior. But when we search
Not
for the
exactly dishonest behavior. The point is, we are convinced about something,
right?
Not because the scriptures say, but because our gut feeling says, our attachment says, and then we end up searching for scriptural quotes to support that attachment. Like you may go to Folio and type chocolate, and in Prabhupada quotes, and you may never see Prabhupada speaking anything about chocolate. So you may say that, oh, Prabhupada has never spoken about not eating chocolate. Or you may even get a quote where someone offered Prabhupada a chocolate that they had made, and Prabhupada ate it also.
Right.
So which means basically what we are doing is we are trying to justify our attachment, and try to search for some quotes for that. Like
right.
That.
Is this only applicable to the gross sense gratificatory things, or is it also applicable to some things? Like, for example, some time ago, I was hurt by somebody because he abused me as well as the devotees, my Guru Maharaj and all. So afterwards, I just remembered that the consequences of such action is very serious. So I started searching for codes related to Vaishnava Aparadh. Although I didn't mention that to that person, but I kept searching for these codes. and then saving them for my own reference. So is this also a kind of dishonesty?
I mean, from what you have described to me, it doesn't seem like, it doesn't sound like. Uh, matlab, uh, he was criticizing, and then you search for the scriptures to see uh, what are the dangers of Vaishnava Aparad.
Right.
So that's what you did. I think that's fair enough. I don't. I mean, from what you have described, at least it doesn't sound like dishonesty to me.
Right.
Because you want to know so that you can protect yourself also, and you can help others who may be moving in that direction.
No, not exactly. That was not my intention. So when he spoke such things against me and my so many devotees, I basically is a non-practitioner. He doesn't practice devotional service, so
Okay.
he could not appreciate the devotees, and he was getting disturbed about whatever we are preaching, and
Okay.
he kept it within himself for months. And
Mm,
then one day he came out and he blasted even my Guru Maharaj. He has
mm,
never come to even hear him, but he heard
mm,
him over the internet, and then he started speaking so many things. So
mm,
which is completely unacceptable to me. So
mm,
I just left that person away, and
mm,
I separated mentally from that person afterwards.
mm,
But I could not quieten my mind. So I
mhm,
kept researching because we have read so much about the Vaishnava Prad. So
mm,
I
mm,
started going deeper in that particular point, and then digged out all the quotes related to the effects of such a Vaishnava Prad.
so
So
that,
with the idea
I mean,
that
is
this
it that yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
with the
That can
idea what kind of consequences and suffering this person might have.
uh,
So
and then feeling
it just
a subtle happiness that yes, he is going to suffer for
right.
what he has done, like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's not completely wrong, but it's not probably the uh, best of consciousness. Uh,
right,
you could like Parikshit
right,
Maharaj, we were discussing sixth canto. The beginning of sixth canto, Parikshit Maharaj laments for people who would go to hell and suffer,
right,
uh, and uh, and uh, and he was feeling genuinely hurt, even though they actually deserve to go and suffer in hell for all the misdoings that they have done.
right,
So, so I mean, this is good because you are becoming angry for someone who has criticized the Vaishnavas and especially Guru, but to hope and feel good that good, he will be suffering the result of his own this thing. Rather, we could think about how nice it would be if he if he rectifies his
right.
mentality like that. But
Yeah,
in the spur of the moment, it is very natural that we may feel like at least I'm happy that he will suffer. But later, when we are when our um, when our agitation subsides down, then at
right,
that time we should think, oh, it would be nice if he can rectify his mentality and become nice like that.
right. Why I asked this question is I was not looking into the scriptures to see oh he might have to suffer. Not like Parikshit Maharaj, he was so concerned for the people who are going to hell. I was actually wishing that this person will go to hell
Go
and
to hell. Yeah, yeah,
suffer
correct.
for his reactions, for his karma.
Yeah,
So
it is.
that is a
Yeah,
kind of sense gratification for me, right?
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
mental.
See, actually, it is natural for any Vaishnava. Um, that in the spur of the moment, because Narottam Das Thakur also says, "Kama Krishna Karmarpane Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane." So he says that you can engage um, kama, your passion to do something, in using that you can divert that passion for doing Krishna conscious activities,
Right,
and krodha, you can engage krodha in
right,
bhakta dveshi jane. So it is natural, but
right,
when that anger subsides, we should understand ultimately. the best thing to do would be to pray that
Yeah,
he rectifies his mentality so that he can also come with you to the spiritual world and serve the Vaishnavas. And that is the
sure.
ideal thing. The
Right.
ideal thing, not that I do it. For me also, it's very difficult. But honestly speaking, that is the ideal standard.
True, Prabhu. I am nowhere near to becoming even a devotee in this lifetime. So my anger was purely materialistic
Yeah, I
anger,
know, I know.
but I was using the scriptures to satisfy my mind,
Yeah,
and I felt that when you are talking about this point, exactly what I was doing the same thing. So
yeah.
it's
I mean, we
it's
all
kind
do
of,
it, Prabhu. I also do it. I am not, not that I am above it, but at least we
yeah,
are coming together and discussing so that at least we understand the ideal standards. Uh, Once I
yeah,
remember,
no, you are much higher.
no, actually, I just remembered we were reading His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj's commentary on Harinam Chintamani. Very beautiful points he brings out. So, in one of the points, he says that about disrespecting Guru, he says that mm, Harinam Chintamani says that it is an offense to use the articles used by your Guru uh, for your own purpose. It's an offense.
Right.
So that is what Harinam Chintamani says. And Maharaj gives a very beautiful contemporary commentary on this. He says, and it specifically mentions, Harinam Chintamani mentions the seat of your spiritual master. So if you use the seat of your spiritual master, it is an offense. But
Right.
now, if you see in today's day and age in ISKCON,
Right.
in the traditional systems, if you see in a particular mutt, there is one guru, and the Vyasasan is for him.
Right.
He sits on the Vyasasan and he speaks. So generally,
Right.
there is no chance of anyone else using that guru's seat. But in
Right.
today's ISKCON, the guru hardly stays. The guru is not localized in his particular mutt. Prabhupada instructed the sannyasis to travel all over. So the guru
Right.
travels. So when the guru travels, then naturally in that particular temple, whoever is the senior most or whatever, they may have a rotation system, and everyone sits on the same Vyasasan. And
Right.
subsequently, what to speak of using the guru's seat, but the guru eventually, when he comes back, he has to reuse the seat that you have used.
Right.
So, uh,
So that is very big.
therefore, so in one sense, that is an offense. So, Maharaj says that, look, actually, uh, there are two approaches when you read this. One approach, Maharaj says, is that, oh, in today's day and age, these this principle is impossible to apply, so it is not relevant in today's day and age. Which means you completely relativize that that injunction. You say that this is not meant for this age. This is meant for an old age, like that. The
Okay.
second he says is that that's not the best way of responding to it. He says, yes, I may not be able to follow it because of the institutional situation, but the
Right.
next time when I approach the Vyasasan, when I have to give a class, I have to sit on the Vyasasan,
Right.
I can at least be regretful. I can at least offer a mental apologies to my spiritual master. Please forgive me. I am having to sit on the same seat which has been graced by your divine presence. So, so not that you have stopped using that Vyasasan, you're using it, but at least your
Right.
consciousness is much better. You are
Yeah.
aware of what the ideal standards are, and you have not relativized uh, a, a, a very important instruction. Um, you have understood that it's an eternal instruction, but due to institutional policies, it is not. I am not able to follow it, but I can be apologetic rather than completely callous about oh, it is just not meant for this age, like that.
Right.
So currently our situation might be something, but at least we can worship what the ideal standard is, so that
Right.
one day we may be empowered to move in that direction also.
Okay, Prabhu. Very helpful answer you have given actually by giving this analogy. But this, whatever you discussed now, that has given rise to another small question. Can I ask that?
Yeah, yes, bro.
So you said that scriptures has mentioned that we should not be using the articles given used by the Guru.
Mhm,
So sometimes I have received some kurtas from my Guru Maharaj,
mhm.
and he told that you can use it.
Then you can use it.
Then it is not an offense, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Yeah, respectfully and with great
Yeah.
gratitude, you can definitely use. Yeah.
Once my Guru Mataji gave me my Guru Maharaj slippers, and she said you should not use it but keep it.
No, keep it.
So when we get specific instruction like that, we should
Yeah,
follow that
yeah,
accordingly,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Correct, correct, correct. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you. Yes, Srinivas Prasad Prabhu, I am unmuting you. You can please ask.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhudandat Prabhu.
Am I audible now, Prabhuji?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sorry for the disturbance, Prabhuji. I'm
Yeah,
extremely sorry.
yeah. Go ahead.
Prabhuji, my question is, in fact, today morning I was also thinking about the same thing which you also discussed during your class in the beginning. That
Mhm.
how can we get free from so many these designations we are holding at various places at our house with
Yeah,
relatives, with office.
yeah.
So uh, and even if we want to get free from these temporary designations, but we are sometimes forced by the situation. They remind us about our designation, that you are holding this designation, so you have to do justice.
Yeah.
So how do we get free from these temporary designations and just
That's
focus?
the subject matter that we are going to discuss today. In the next half, we will discuss that.
Thank you so much, Roji.
Very well. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue uh, with today's discussion. So Maharaj says, but there is even a more profound mistake we can make on the spiritual path. He says, when we achieve some success in the practice of our devotional service and learn how to touch people's hearts with the words of the Shastra from Srila Prabhupada and our initiating spiritual master, all of a sudden we imagine ourselves to be something important. Okay, so this is something which um, you know, especially just now I answered some question of Radha Damodar Prabhu. And he said, Prabhu, so what a profound answer. I mean, when I'm reading this statement, I am just recollecting, did it remind me of Srila Prabhupada's mercy? Did it remind me of my spiritual master's mercy? Uh, uh, I mean, honestly speaking, it did not, which means I was taking the credit for myself. So that's what Maharaj is telling. This is a more profound mistake we can make on the spiritual path. When some success comes, uh, then we keep it to ourselves rather than allowing it to pass to whom it belongs actually, which is Srila Prabhupada and the spiritual master. So we forget we have received those merits and achievements from our spiritual master and Krishna. We should always remember that we owe God and our spiritual master everything that we have. On, on, on no account should we attempt to claim the credit by saying, yes, I made it all happen, like that. So this in Madhurya Kadambini, Srila Vishnu Thakur writes, this is the sixth stage of unsteady devotional service or Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, which is called as Taranga Rangini. So Taranga Rangini means due to our proper practice of devotional service, when the Vaishnava community starts recognizing, appreciating, glorifying, giving respect, giving honor, giving facilities, uh, then we start completely floating uh, in those glorification and facilities, uh, not actually thinking that the actual glorification belongs to Krishna and my spiritual master, but we actually take it for ourselves and we start floating in it. uh, then that is called as Taranga Rangini. So Taranga means waves, Rangini means one who takes pleasure surfing the waves of name, fame, glorification, uh, like that. So, uh, like that. Aside from the above, there is another more profound manifestation of pride, which is vanity and conceit. So, he says that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave the most amazing definition of humility. He says, because humility is the opposite of vanity and pride. So now, what is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's definition of humility? So he says, sometimes we think we are humble, but we are acting humble only for the sake of showing off how humble we are. Many times we have such discussions. Prabhu, I am most fallen. No, Prabhu, I am more fallen than you. Then suddenly when the other person says, yes, yes, I know how fallen you are, and he starts telling, few things which indicate that we were actually fallen, then we immediately feel very hurt, and we may start justifying, or we may start clarifying, and all that. So the mind sometimes says, look, be humble, because this is the way of receiving honor from devotees. So if you, this is a great opportunity, so many devotees are there, speak the right thing, show your humility, and you will see how much glorification is following, like that. So we become humble. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a definition of humility we can use to check whether we are actually humble or not. So what is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's definition of humility? He says, true humility is to not expect anything from anyone. That is true humility, which means when it does not come, it does not affect us, because we don't think that we actually deserve receiving it, like that. Next time when we are going to take offense because someone hasn't done something we expected them to, remember this instruction of Raghunath Das Goswami, Sada Dambam Hitva. He says, give up this pride, be humble. So someone may say, oh, I don't have pride. But when you say that, oh, he should have actually responded to me, spoken to me like this. If we have this kind of an expectation, then that is, we are not humble. So, but it's difficult uh, to actually develop true humility. Takes actually genuine spiritual advancement. Actually, it is not very easy. Um, every day, if we are careful and observing, if we are sincere, every day we will get some hint or other indicating our actual advancement, our actual level of advancement. Many times we may not become humbled, but we can be humbled by the indications that Krishna gives every day in and day out, by presenting us, putting us in various situations. Like I was sharing the situation that I was put in last night, and which carried over today morning also. Uh, very stark reminder as to where you actually are, like that. So next time when we are going to take offense because someone hasn't done something we expected them to, remember this instruction of Raghunath Das Goswami, Sada Dambam Hitva. At every moment, it's a minute-to-minute choice. We choose not to respond in that particular way. He says, keep renouncing pride because it manifests itself in resentment and the mood that someone owes us something because we are exceptional. So we think that, oh, I deserve it. I really deserve it. He should have spoken to me like this. How dare he speak with me with in this mood? How could he use such words to address me like that? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. Everyone can see God. Everyone has the way open before them, regardless of what family they were born into, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the sins they have committed. Even if we are at death's door, we can still see God. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. We can see God. Everyone is qualified. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abira Shumba Yavanaha Kasadaya. Yenye cha papa yadapashraya shraya shuddhanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. Like however fallen one may be, there is no material disqualification to take up to the path of bhakti. And if you take up to the path of bhakti, you can achieve perfection if you sincerely follow. So no amount of material disqualification is actually a disqualification to practice bhakti and see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. He also taught that the important thing is to develop true humility because it is the basis of the genuine spiritual experience. That's why he says, Trinadapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnuna, amanina manadena, kirtani sada hari. Whatever occurs on the basis of pride is false spiritual experience. Huh? So this is very amazing point that he is making here. Whatever occurs on the basis of pride is false spiritual experience. So it is not true spiritual experience at all. So if I think that, oh, I must be better, that's why I'm experiencing this, so then that experience is false spiritual experience. Or, wow, I am experiencing it. Let me check out if others are also experiencing the same thing, and you may ask others. Huh? So if everyone says no, no, and you think, my God, I am the only person experiencing this, so I must actually be more advanced than others. So Maharaj says, no. Whatever occurs on the basis of pride is false spiritual experience. It is not true. In this verse, Raghunath Das Goswami says, Sada dambam hitva. Sada means whichever level you have reached, be careful of pride. That's what he's telling. That is why he says Sada. Huh? Moreover, the higher level you have attained, the more reason you have to become proud. Because in Vaishnava community, what they will, no one is going to glorify us for our material achievements in one sense. You know, you are a millionaire, whereas, you know, a very advanced devotee, he may not be materially very well to do, but the millionaire devotee will come and sit at his feet and hear Krishna Katha. Which means naturally when someone takes up to bhakti, we start identifying and respecting the spiritual development only. And the more we develop spiritually, the more devotees are going to glorify us, give us facilities, give us lot of honor and everything. And we have all the more reason to actually become proud. So Maharaj says we should always monitor this carefully. Introspection, basically, honest introspection, because many times we get stuck up here because the pride, glorification, and facilities are too intoxicating, and you know, it's like you know, Shatabdi Express getting stuck up due to some signal. You know, some signal is there, red signal for 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe there is some maintenance work or some other issues. You know, it was just flying literally fast, but then suddenly due to red signal it has to stop. Just because it is Shatabdi Express does not mean it can fly over any issues, you know, actual, you know, rail issues or whatever, track issues. So when glorification and facilities and honor, when they keep coming, so unless we have a habit of honestly introspecting, what am I here for, what am I practicing all these things for, am I settling for anything less than what my actual aspiration is, what my actual aspiration should be, then we get stuck up here actually. For different people it could be actually a pretty long time we may get stuck up in this situation. And this is when we have honest, very intimate, well-wishing friends they can actually shake us from this situation. Friends, seniors, whomever they may be. Prabhu, I'm very happy for you. Please don't get me wrong. You're doing quite well. Everyone is appreciating you. But I feel that you are probably getting carried away. If only you just neglect whatever honor glorification is coming, just imagine what you can achieve. You have, because if we, if you are really so doing things quite well, then you are probably knocking the doors of Nishta, steady devotional service. But you have just gotten carried away by all this name, fame, glorification that is coming. And this is all the more difficult in this age of, uh, in this particular age where the social media is, anyone can become famous actually without much nonsense, much substance. uh, you post something and overnight it becomes viral, and yes, like that. So so therefore, in today's age of social media, this Tarangarangini ideally has to come much late, but this Tarangarangini can actually come much more earlier, while we are struggling with probably some gross anarthas. But because people are just seeing what you speak and what you do, but they are not staying with you, so probably they have no means of understanding how actually advanced we are. And uh, uh, and therefore, because they just hear what we are speaking, which maybe we may just be parroting what we are reading without much realization, but still we are parroting the realization of the acharyas, which is so profound. Definitely, people are mesmerized, because we are at least, for one credit, our one credit is that we are at least parroting what the acharyas have mentioned, and for that we get so much glorification, which is actually meant for the acharyas. They have written, uh, and we just speak and we get all the glorification. So in this day and age where everything is virtual, uh, the person who is hearing us, they may not have a true idea of what our actual level of advancement is, because when you live with a person, then gradually you get to see. So therefore, this is actually very very misleading age that we are living in, especially for sadhakas, um, and especially for, I'm myself included, giving class over, that is why we should always take, um, uh, you know people with whom we are staying, when they take our words little seriously, then that is a, I won't say that is a very real estimate of our spiritual progress, but that is little bit closer to reality. So, but otherwise, over the in the virtual world, uh, you know we should not be too foolish to think that, oh, people are so much appreciating my this thing, uh, you know my reflections. What reflections? Actually, we are reading um, Raghunath Das Goswami's writings, which has been commented upon by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which has been further commented upon by other acharyas, and we are just reading, that's all. So in one sense, the glorification goes to whom? But then, because these thoughts are so profound, that anyone who hears it, it touches their heart, and they naturally may start glorifying. So therefore, this virtual platform is in one sense very very dangerous actually. So unless, if one is only on virtual platform where you only speak with devotees who do not know you that well, then their glorification, actually we should better to neglect only. uh, Better, the people with whom we are staying, who see us day in and day out, their estimation of us is little more towards reality, than all this whole virtual thing. This is something that we need to think about. I mean, I'm talking for myself. I'm sure few of you who are, at least some of you who are attending this may also be giving classes online or, Zoom classes like that. But this is something that we need to, I need to remind myself all the time, um, because, this can be really deluding like that. So that's what Maharaj is writing here. We should always monitor this carefully, which means sincere introspection. As soon as you become proud, you are bound to fail. This is the instruction Raghunath Das Goswami gives to us. He says further that we should just cast away our pride. Pride generates attachments. Pride is our way to exist in this world. See, pride means upadhi. Whatever we are good at, we identify with that upadhi. Like one strong upadhi that I have is, I like to teach. I'm a teacher, like that. That's a very strong upadhi. So, and the other upadhi which sort of may not be that strong, but still, I know how to cook, or I can cook reasonably okay. At least some people appreciate. So like that, and when you are good at it, when you develop some pride, immediately that upadhi catches up. So it is not. So therefore, it is not easy to say cast away your pride. Look, Prabhu, from today, you just give up this pride and all problems will be solved. So it does not happen that way. But can we cast away our pride? Like this is the Srinivas Prasad Prabhu asked this question. Can we give up our pride? Which means, can we give up our upadhis? We are playing so many roles. Can we really give it up? How can we exist without any kind of self-concept in which we feel satisfied? Because if I identify myself as a teacher, and if someone glorifies me for being a good teacher or something, and I feel happy and I feel satisfied. If you are asking me to give up all the upadhis, then where is my satisfaction going to come? This is a very serious thing. How am I going to, I will feel worthless. I will feel, what will happen to my self-worth? Like that, the question arises. How can we exist without any kind of self-concept in which we feel satisfied? We can't. Actually, it is not possible. Giving up pride means take off all false coverings, all this armor that you put on. Give up all pride of the roles that you are playing here. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Naham Vipro na Chanadapati, Napi Vaishyo na Shudro, Naham Varni na Chagrihapati, Na Vanasto Yatirva. You are not a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. You are not a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, or shudra. My God, you have taken all my upadhis away. Then who am I? Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasanudas. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the master of the gopis. So which means he is asking us to give up all our conditioned upadhis and asking us to actually revive the actual upadhis. Our actual upadhi is being servant of Krishna. Or servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. That is the actual upadhi of the living entity, the soul. So, therefore, what exactly here Srila Raghunath Das Goswami or here Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj is indicating is that give up your material upadhis which are belonging to your body and actually develop the real upadhi of being the servant of Krishna. And how to develop that real upadhi? That he says, by developing. So because to think that I am servant of Krishna, that is the only upadhi, that is difficult because I am not seeing Krishna. But we are seeing the Guru, Gurau, we are seeing Vrindavan, Goshte, we are seeing Vrajavasis, Goshtalayeshu, we are seeing other Vaishnavas, Sujane, we are seeing the Brahmanas, Bhusuragane. We have received our mantra, Swamantre. We have received the holy name, Shri Namni. So, and we also have gained access to the process of surrendering to Radha and Krishna, Vraja Navayuva Dvandva Sharane. So, we can start developing these upadhis. Oh, um, I am the servant of the holy name. I am the servant of the Vaishnavas. I am the servant of my Guru. These are, we start developing these upadhis. And when we start developing these upadhis, then we will actually start gaining a sense of satisfaction from these upadhis actually. So give up roles, give up upadhis means give up material upadhis and start developing the right kind of spiritual upadhis. That's what he's indicating, which we will see in little more detail in the next two sessions, the next two sections of this Maharaj's commentary. Okay. So we are told, give up all the roles that you are playing here in this world. Stop being a woman, stop being a mother or a father, stop being a Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya or a Brahmana. Essentially, Raghunath Das Goswami instructs us to undress because all of these shells are the clothes that we have put on. How would we feel if suddenly we had to, even if not physically, but at least internally, uncover ourselves of all these upadhis? We can imagine what are the strongest identifications that I'm very much attached to. I feel I am this, I am this, I am this upadhi, like that. Then we would completely feel defenseless and unprotected. Let's say, my strongest upadhi is probably teacher or whatever, preacher, whatever it may be. What if I am put in a situation where there is no teaching opportunity, where there is no preaching opportunity? Then what would I feel? I would feel unprotected, defenseless, worthless. So basically, Maharaj says pride is a shield, an armor that we have created, a shell that we have put on. Pride is like an armor. Whenever we feel little worthless, then we feel, oh, I am so good at this. Look, yesterday for my class, these people glorified me. We take and then we suddenly feel a sense of self-worth and then we can move on like that. So we are like oysters. I hope you know what an oyster is, from which pearls come. So we are like oysters. On top we have a shell and we are inside thinking I am fine. Because what we have, the inside the oyster shell, that flesh is like very soft flesh actually. But the shell is very strong and hard. And I think I'm fine. I have protected myself. Let them try to hurt me. Like that we think. When we hear the advice to become a small, defenseless soul and take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, completely giving up pride, it is very difficult to follow this advice and abandon our pride because we have suffered a great deal. In the material world, especially when you go to a particular school sometimes, in a very good school, from a mediocre school you go to a very good school, you have been a topper in the mediocre school, and you go to a really good school where actually you have nothing to be proud of. Whatever aspect you take, there are at least 25-30 more people who are much better than you. Then you feel like completely armorless. What is my identity? Like that we may feel. Whenever we hear the advice to become small, defenseless soul and take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, completely giving up pride, it is very difficult to follow this advice and abandon our pride because we have suffered a great deal. How was it when you entered into that wonderful school where you were like a non-entity? You had nothing to show anything to others, but then slowly, over years, you work on certain aspects and you actually become good and people start noticing your skills and all that, and now you say give it up and it becomes so difficult. We worry that if we become as humble as possible, others will exploit us, and that may very well happen. This is why at first glance it may seem that such advice is impractical. Huh? Prabhuji, you are telling humble, humble, but what if I become humble? What if people exploit me? That is the question. So this is the internal work that we must do. Sada dambam hitva kururatim apurvam atitaram. We must try hard to obtain our spiritual identity. This is the first verse. So that's what, this is the point that he is making here. So it is not just enough to give up our material upadhis, but while we are giving up material upadhis, we have to start developing our spiritual upadhis, and we have to start internalizing those spiritual upadhis. Otherwise it becomes very difficult. I went to a boarding school, and those children, so there are two reasons why children become very homesick there. So one thing is, those children who come from a very, very close-knit family where parents have been extremely affectionate, that becomes one reason for them becoming homesick. And second reason is that this is a more profound reason, where they are not good at establishing new relationships with the in the new system, with their friends and teachers, like that. So such children, they suffer due to homesickness. So similarly, we will also become upadhi sick if we start giving up our upadhis. Okay, I have a strong upadhi that I am a teacher, so from tomorrow I will not teach, like that. Then we will become upadhi sick. We will become really sick of, we'll be missing our upadhi so much if we are not sufficiently trying to establish the new, ignite the new upadhis with respect to Gurau, Goshte, Goshtalayishu, Sujane, Bhusuragane, Swamantre, Srinamni, Vrajanavayuva, Dvandva Sharane. If you are not sincerely endeavoring to establish newer relationships, satisfying relationships with these things connected to Krishna, then giving up our upadhis prematurely will make us actually like this, like upadhi sick, like that. So we can externally remain what we are, and we must remain. So like that, he says, this is the advice of the first verse. We can externally remain what we are, and we must remain what we are, playing different roles. It's not that we should give up these roles, but internally we must remain a tiny soul who is constantly linked with Krishna by millions of ties, and who is always looking for ever new ties, for ever new affection for Krishna. So constantly, externally, I am a teacher, I am a boss in my company, I am a managing director, I am a CEO, whatever it is. It's not that we should give up those roles. Externally we may do, but internally we must try to nurture a very rich internal relationship with, if not Krishna directly, at least with all these various things connected to Krishna. We should try to nurture and develop a rich internal life, working on our spiritual upadhis. Okay, so, and in this context, okay, I think at this point of time, I will pause for a few minutes to see if there are any quick discussions, and then we will take this subject matter forward. So if you have any quick comments, discussions, questions, you can please raise your hands, and then we will discuss for a while and then move on to the next section. So if you have anything, you can please raise your hands. Anything? Okay. So I see 3-4 hands up now. Kumari Daya Mataji, I am unmuting you, Mataji. You can please ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, this last one, the last statement that you said, externally we should be doing our roles, but internally we should be cultivating more deeper Krishna consciousness with Krishna, like using those, I mean, whatever upadhis, the spiritual upadhis that we are supposed to connect with.
Correct.
But usually it is also said, what we are internally, those things will manifest out externally also, no, Prabhuji?
Correct. So that is why if we internally create the right upadhis, then very unconsciously they will start manifesting outside also.
Okay, so if somebody is exploiting us, so in that situation we ignore whatever that is happening to us.
Okay.
Is it like that? How do we understand? I didn't understand.
I will choose not to answer this question right now, because that's exactly what we are going to discuss immediately after. From the very next slide, we are going to discuss that very same point. So I think I will save that. Maharaj will answer that question.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gopi Nandini Mataji, I am unmuting you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu, in this month's calendar, the quotation is given in every calendar month of the thing. So it says the deepest craving of any living entity is to seek appreciation.
Correct.
And the verse is given as 10:33:9.
Okay.
So I was thinking, even for these upadhis, for the upadhis which we are having, it is because somebody has appreciated us, we get those upadhis. Correct. And that craving is always there. Now, correct, all this guru, goshte, goshaleshu, when we, these things, we don't get any appreciation, because as of now, we are trying to get connected, but the appreciation part is not there as yet. So, how do we deal with this? Because appreciation is the deepest thing of every individual soul.
Correct. So, very interesting you quoted this verse. I would really like to go and check the context of this verse and try to understand, what context this verse has been quoted. I'll try to do that research. If you get an opportunity, you can do. Of course, appreciation is the greatest craving for any living entity. What does it say? The greatest need, or what does it say? I am unmuting you, Gopinandini Mataji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, what does it say?
Appreciation it says the deepest craving of human nature is the need to be appreciated.
Yeah, correct. So, okay, it could be from a purport also. I am not very sure. I will try to check that and get back to you. But I think what we need to learn from that is how you can conquer the hearts of other people by the simple way of appreciating them, and that way you can connect them to Krishna. This is one way in which I look at. And of course, coming to your point, that when we connect ourselves to these upadhis, we may not get appreciation. Yes, we will definitely not get appreciation from common public, but we will, if we are deeply connected to scriptures and the words of Guru and Sadhu, then we will understand that then we will be able to see cheerleaders in the form of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, and those who are deeply rooted to Shastra, they will say, good, you are on the right path. That is an appreciation. But common public may not, because common public may not appreciate it. So appreciation will come, but not from common people.
No, I'm not looking at common people for appreciation, but even in my spiritual practice, now every step which I'm taking it, I would like somebody to say, yes, you're on the right path, go ahead, keep ahead. That motivation, that this thing is...
Yeah, that we will definitely, if you are firmly connected to advanced devotees And if we are deeply rooted in hearing and chanting and studying of scriptures, then you will be able to see the signposts, the milestones in a sadhaka's life, whether you're crossing those milestones or not, and they are actually encouragements. Yes, you are on the right path. And of course, if you are connected to the right kind of devotees who can identify, who are trained enough to see the symptoms of progress or deviation and point it out nicely, so then we get encouragement from there. So it is our responsibility to actually take that effort to establish that kind of a relationship, both with the Shastras and with the sadhus, like that. Is that okay, Mataji?
Prabhuji, how do I know it's not a constructive criticism or it is done out of, envy or something like that? How do I make out that?
How does your son make out whether, when you say something, how does your son make out whether it is out of envy or if it's a constructive criticism?
My son is never going to feel I'm envious of him or anything like that. It is for his welfare. Yeah.
Why? Why he feels like that?
He trusts me. Whatever I'm going to do is good.
Why he trusts you?
Because I'm his mother, so he trusts me. Whatever I say, it's going to be good for him.
Not just because of that. No, not just because. What if tomorrow you say that I'm sorry, this is a very it's not very appropriate for me to speak this way. What if tomorrow you tell that actually I'm not your mother, this person is your mother? Is it like from tomorrow he will stop trusting you and he will start trusting that other person?
No, I doubt he will do that.
He will not do that.
No, he will not do that.
So he is not trusting you just because you are his mother. He trusts you because you have sufficiently invested in that relationship.
Okay.
So that's the point. That's with that. We just took one example of relationship between a son and a mother, but this is true with every relationship. So if in a relationship you are not even sure whether the other person is speaking this in the as a constructive criticism, or maybe if you are having a doubt that it could be it could be words spoken out of envy, then which means we have not sufficiently invested in that relationship. The relationship is not well nourished. It's a malnourished relationship, and we have a lot of homework to do.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So okay, so Srinivas Prasad Prabhu, I am unmuting you, bro.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
I got the answer which I had asked the question prior to this.
Okay.
But the only thing is, like, sometimes we are like, as I told you, we are forced to.
No, I forgot your previous question. Can you repeat your previous question?
I had my question was like, how can we get free from so many
upadhis? Correct. Yeah.
And then the first part is like answered to a very beautiful manner. My second part of the question was that we are forced to remind us about our designation, which we try to we try to get free from those decisions, but the situation brings us to some certain level that they remind us of our designations, that you are holding this designation, now you have to act according to this designation.
So
how to
yeah. So now
am I able to?
Yeah, I'm understanding your point. So I'm just asking you a question. You can, while you were at school, okay, or while you were young, what were you really good at?
Right.
Reasonably good at. I mean, of course, You can always say, Prabhuji, I was not good at anything. I mean, please cast away such humility, and you can share at least something in which you are reasonably good at while you are young.
I used to love playing.
Of course, you used to love playing, but
Good at.
what were you good at? Before 10th, before you were 10 years old. Something you can just make up something also if you are not able to think.
Good at playing cricket or badminton or whatever.
Okay, let's say you are good at playing cricket. Are you still attached to that upadhi right now?
No.
You are not attached to that upadhi, right? How did that upadhi go away?
Because I didn't identify with that after coming to Krishna consciousness slowly.
Forget
now my
about after coming to Krishna consciousness.
Interest got changed.
Yeah, your interest got changed means actually you got attached to other upadhis. You had other upadhis to replace those older upadhis. So in order to give up the old upadhis, we have to actually develop newer upadhis, work on developing newer upadhis. Then slowly the older upadhis will go away. So that is why we are discussing here Gurau, Goshte, Goshtalayishu, Sujane. So now this is just theory for us. Now we have to start practicing. That how am I going to work on developing these new upadhis? That is why we did, if you remember, we did this exercise long time back. I am surprised that we are still discussing the first verse only. Long time back, must have been about 2.5 months back, we did this exercise where different devotees shared, how we can develop attachment for these 8 things. So if we can get back to that file and then, again here and note down and try practicing, try put into practice the various things that we can do to develop attachment towards Guru, Vrindavan, Vrajavasis and all that. If we can apply that, then gradually the new upadhi would be created, and very imperceptibly the older upadhis will go away.
Correct.
So that is why that's what we are discussing again and again.
But it can be only done, Prabhuji, if we discuss it again and again. Then only a person like me has a hope. Otherwise,
yes, that is why.
Frankly speaking, it's otherwise very difficult because
we are discussing it now.
Personal conditioning.
Yeah, correct. See, all of us are like that. I discuss honestly because I want constant reminders. So when I like something, when I really think that this particular book has a lot of personal guidance for me, then I make it a point to make small groups, and in 2-3 groups I keep on discussing so that I can keep reminding myself. So now that you have heard this, note it down. You discuss with other people, other devotees, whom you may be connected with, so that it will serve as a constant reminder, like that.
Prabhuji, I had written another question, and which is exactly coming to this point which you have told. So I love to hear and then I love to share with devotees, and I request devotees to share whatever they have heard. So when we discuss about whatever they have heard or whatever I share with them, so many times it happens that they appreciate a lot that, Prabhuji, the way you explained it, it has really opened our eyes, and we are able to understand this verse now. So then they appreciate, and I just request them that it's not me. We always pass it on to Guru and Srila Prabhupada. Because of Srila Prabhupada, this all is happening. We don't have any knowledge of our own. We are very foolish. So I always try to pass it on to Guru and Srila Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas. But still, they appreciate, and they sometimes praise. And
as long as you are passing it on, you don't have to worry. If they again appreciate, you again pass it on. If they again appreciate, I mean, you don't have to verbally do it. You can mentally Pass it on
I
to
do
the.
it, but sometimes they mention all those things in a group. So I have requested many times devotees that please don't write all these things in a group. So then I will not be able to discuss with you. So some
Uh,
devotees they have restrained, but still out of love, I don't know.
That's okay.
Some devotees.
So you can just pass it on. You can just pass it on. That's okay. If others are getting connected that way to the teachings, then that is good. That's okay. But we have to consciously and every time keep passing it on to where it belongs. That's all. Okay, bro.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Krishna Prabhu, I'm unmuting you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Dandavat.
Yes, Prabhu Dandavat, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you said that the material upadhis, they have to be given up.
Yeah.
And we have to develop spiritual upadhis. So, actually, upadhi is a stumbling block.
No, the wrong upadhis are stumbling blocks.
Is there a right stumbling block? Is there a thing called right stumbling block? I'm not clear about that. Why do we say spiritual upadhis?
No, because see, what we have heard for us, upadhi in itself has a negative connotation, the way we have seen. But it is not like that. The right upadhis are, so upadhis are not stumbling blocks, but the wrong upadhis are stumbling blocks. Like false ego is bad, true ego is good. That's something that we need to definitely develop.
False ego has a negative connotation. True ego doesn't have a negative connotation.
Correct. So see, like for example, now the word grihamedi. So if you see that grihamedi word, the way we know it, it has a negative connotation. But actually in Shastras, if you see, the word grihamedi in itself does not have a negative connotation. There is a verse glorifying Lord Ram, Namas Sita Sametaya Ramaya Grihamedine, like that. So it is addressing Lord Ram in connection with Mother Sita as a Grihamedi. So is that criticizing Lord Ram? So their Grihamedi means a couple, a wife and husband. But when the word Grihamedi is used in conjunction with the word Grihastha, then sometimes it takes up a negative connotation. So actually the word Grihamedi in itself does not have a negative connotation by itself. And also if you see the word Prajalpa, so the Prajalpa, if you see the dictionary meaning, it has the meaning of conversation, that's all. But when you use the word Prajalpa in conjunction with Krishna Katha, then Prajalpa takes on a negative connotation. In his book Bhaktyaloka, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, while talking about Prajalpa, he writes that actually the Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis, they used to do Prajalpa, like that he writes. So what he means is Prajalpa means a conversation. And what conversation would the Goswamis have? They would have about Krishna only. So therefore, it is not necessary that upadhi in itself is not bad. So the wrong material upadhis with respect to this material body, that is improper upadhi, like that. That's my understanding.
Okay, then another question. What are the spiritual upadhis that we are talking about?
That's what we are telling now, Prabhuji, about with your connection with the Guru, Vrindavan, the Vrajavasis, the Vaishnavas, the Brahmanas, your mantra, the holy name. We all have a relationship. These are all upadhis only.
So instead of trying to derive the nourishment from the praises showered by the materialistic people, we should try to derive nourishment from these right sources. Is that the way we have to understand?
Yeah. See,
because after all, a soul is not an inert object.
Correct,
It requires a relationship is the basis of life.
Correct. That's what we are discussing right now. That's why we are talking about spiritual.
So instead of deriving the nourishment from these praises showered by others like Tarangarangini, we should try to derive satisfaction from the true relationship and the love that we develop to these 8 items.
Correct.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we will continue our discussion. I don't see any hands up, so we still have some time. So we'll continue. So we were thinking that what will happen, but he says that Maharaj, we saw, he says that we can externally maintain these roles that we may play as a CEO or as a managing director or whatever it may be. It's not that we have to give that role itself. Externally we can play that role, but internally we should have a rich internal life. We should develop a nourishing relationship with these 8 things. That's what we were seeing. So in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada tells the story about Narada Muni that illustrates this verse very well. Narada Muni, you all know this story. Narada Muni is a great preacher, and the power of his words and his purity is so strong that everybody he speaks to becomes a devotee. Once he preached to a cobra. You all know this story. He preached to a cobra, and the cobra became a devotee. I will paraphrase the story. And then when the cobra becomes a devotee, he says that Narada Muni preaches to him, you should not unnecessarily bite and cause harm to others. Don't do all these things. And then the cobra accepted, and when people saw this change in behavior of this cobra, then they started beating that cobra. So then it became very perplexed, and it got perplexed. So, but later it went back to Narada Muni and told him, what is this? What have you instructed me? So now the people take sticks and beat me up. So I am suffering because of this. So therefore, Narada Muni told him that, my dear disciple, I did tell you not to bite, but I didn't tell you not to raise your hood. So from now on, you can puff up your hood. So meaning, so when we give up our material upadhis, naturally people will criticize us, and actually we should not be giving up those upadhis. We should be spiritualizing them. Like for example, oh, I am a father, that is a upadhi. So from today I will give up my family. It's not like that. So we can't do that. Internally we have to develop our rich inner life. That's what. So when Narada Muni told this to the serpent, he began to behave in this way, and naturally everyone again started respecting and fearing the snake. So that is why sometimes when students hear that this modern education is a slaughterhouse and things like that, then immediately, anyway they don't like studies. And one of my friends, he stays in the United States. He has a 7-year-old son, and he is telling his father, I will not go to school. School is a slaughterhouse. This is the problem with giving information prematurely, because without the person having the right kind of spiritual grounding. A 7-year-old boy telling, I will not go to school because school is slaughterhouse. Can a 7-year-old even understand what a slaughterhouse is properly? So he is speaking like that. So he need not be told that school is a slaughterhouse. So actually, when we when we properly understand, once His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, when he met one of the devotees, whose birthday incidentally happens to be today. So he got initiated when he was in his 9th standard or 10th standard, like that. So when he went to meet Maharaj after the initiation ceremony, he went with his parents, and Maharaj told him that he gave him personal instruction. He told him that, look, I left my studies incomplete, and I just went to first year college and then I dropped out. But if I would get a chance, but if I had gotten the proper spiritual knowledge, and if I was in school or college, I would try to be the best possible student, so that is my externally I'll try to do that, so that internally when people get attracted to me, I can connect them to Krishna. So in this way, we have to maintain our external. We may have to maintain, I'll use the right words, or I'll try to use the right words. We may have to use we may have to maintain some of our external upadhis, because if we give them up, many people may become non-Krishna conscious, or many people may not necessarily get attracted to Krishna consciousness. So therefore, we have to be careful to not prematurely give up some of our upadhis, which may eventually we can utilize it in preaching or other such Krishna conscious activities. Like for example, a family. You are a father. As a father, the son may not be Krishna conscious, but the son has affection for the father. If the father behaves nicely with him, then if the son constantly keeps experiencing the affection of the father, and he reposes his affection and appreciation towards the father who happens to be a devotee, then gradually he is accumulating Ajnata Sukriti. And that Ajnata Sukriti over a long time may eventually make that son into a devotee. So therefore, we should not hear this and prematurely start giving up our upadhis like that. So Narada Muni, okay, that's what we saw. This parable contains a very deep meaning for the pride we have. For the pride that we have is like a snake's venom. The advice that Raghunath Das Goswami gives us is that we should not let the poison of pride reign in our hearts. Externally, we can raise our hoods and we must go on playing the parts that we have to play. But inwardly, we must ceaselessly pray to Krishna and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we may externally be playing our parts, but internally we should nurture a very deep, rich inner life while trying to establish a relationship with these 8 things. That's what here His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj is indicating. So now I will just pause for 1 minute to see if there are any quick questions, because we are going to move to the next section. So I will just wait for a few seconds to see if there are any hands up. If not, we will move to the next part, where he is going to talk about how do we establish a relationship with the Guru. So Kumari Daya Mataji, I am unmuting you, Mataji.
Prabhuji, I am little confused. I understood this principle that externally we have to play our part, and internally we have to be deepen our Krishna consciousness. But is it not again come under deception? Are we not cheating other people?
Can you give an example, Mataji, how you are cheating?
Means
how would
like,
that be cheating?
Actually, if I need to think about it, but I mean, scenario I'm not able to think as of
Because
now.
if
But
you present a real scenario, then we can discuss about it. Because I mean, I'm just trying to understand myself. How would that be cheating? Like, okay, you go to office,
okay,
and you know, uh, you you have many subordinates under you. So if they come to know that you are a devotee and a soft-hearted person, maybe they may try to not do their work properly or exploit you
yeah,
like that.
yeah, that also one scenario, Prabhuji. Yes, yes, that can also
So I
happen.
mean, yeah, you can always be firm and nice. You can be firm, but at the same time, uh, you can be nice to them. Uh, when reward them nicely. Otherwise, see, there are many ways of controlling people. Uh, Force and stick is one way of controlling, and some people may listen to that only. But there may be most people may respond to um, you know gentleness, affection. So you can control people through that also. But sometimes when it does not work, you may have to take a very firm stance. You can do that. But the you know I mean, that is not wrong. You can always do that. So but we have to understand that so in that way, if you take a very firm stance, because of which that person may develop some negativity towards you, there is a chance that uh, he may go little bit away from Krishna. So you can always think, what would be the best way to respond in such a way that I don't allow this person to uh, uh, you know take advantage. At the same time, uh, I give him an opportunity to develop some favorableness towards Krishna. So that we have to constantly meditate, and we can offer prayers so that Krishna can give us some intelligence to act in an appropriate way, where they don't exploit us. At the same time, uh, our response may actually inspire them to come one step closer to Krishna, like that.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Madhavi, Gopi Mataji, I'm unmuting you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, I was listening to whole thing, but I'm a little confused about. See, we are saying that whatever the external upadhis are, we should keep it and use it as and when required for the spiritual benefit or our own self as well as others.
Correct.
But regarding this spiritual upadhis, means Guru, Goshte, Goshthalaya, like what is our exact upadhi, spiritual upadhi in regards to this? Like das of all these things, that is the real upadhi. Is this the right understanding or?
Yeah, it starts with that. But it starts developing um, more tangible forms as and when we try to establish a relationship with them. Like, for example, uh, I remember the day I joined college. On that particular day, uh, you know, I had a Sri Vaishnav Tilak, and the person and my father had come to join me, and in front of me was another boy who also had a Sri Vaishnav Tilak. His father had a Sri Vaishnav Tilak. Instantaneously, both the fathers got very attracted. So they spoke with the warden of the first year hostel, and they said, can you please give them the same room, like that? And they said, uh, his father said, you should always try to be his friend. And my father said, you try to be his friend, like that. So, uh, so we mentally decided, okay, same Sri Vaishnav Tilak, he's also wearing, we could be a friend, like that. So it was a very vague understanding of how that friendship would evolve. But this was in 1998. Now, 22 years down the line, I am still very much in touch with that person. But that relationship has evolved in a very profoundly tangible way. eventually somehow both of us got connected to Krishna consciousness also. So 22 years down the line, the relationship has evolved into there are so many facets, so many details to that relationship, but it all started in a very nondescript way. Yeah, I should be his friend, he should be my friend, like that, not knowing how he would be, how he would speak, how he would respond, what would be his mannerisms. Is he good at studies, is he not so good at studies, does he share the same thing, same interest that I have? Nothing. But over a period of time, when we started spending time with each other, the actual relationship started unfolding little by little, like that. So that's how, when we start endeavoring in that direction to try to sincerely establish a relationship with these 8 items, gradually it may start with just Das, like that, but it will not remain just Das. If we are actually sincerely endeavoring in that direction, many different facets of that relationship will start unfolding when we actually start spending time and start sincerely endeavoring to establish a relationship. That's what I feel.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Sureshwar Prabhu, I am unmuting you. Sureshwar
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandavad Prabhuji.
Dandat Prabhu.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, bro.
Prabhuji, while interacting with all these eight items, with devotees and other pastimes of Krishna's things, it should manifest externally also. As we are discussing, internally is a one part, and externally is a different, dealing with materialistic peoples. So when we start interacting with these all 8 items, it should externally also, we should have a reflection of that.
Yeah, eventually it will happen.
Eventually it happens. But the thing is, like coming to the other part, like deceiving and other things, while dealing within this material world, what happens? Actually, Prabhuji, I'm in a business. I'm in a business. If we want to apply the same thing here also, suppose somebody send me, I'm giving an example also for that. If somebody is sending me inferior goods, and I will act according to that. If actually it is 50 rupees lesser quality. If I don't deceive them and I tell them that perfect thing, that it is 50 rupees difference, then they will think that I am cheating and they will try to pull me down to 5 rupees. So they will make me under loss for 50 rupees. And if I'll deceive them and I'll tell them it is 100 rupees difference, and then they will come down to 50 rupees, then they will feel very happy.
No,
and
actually,
I've given you an example. So how to deal with it? Yeah.
See, that is business language, because in business, unless you have established a very good relationship with that person, that the other person trusts you, and you trust him.
No, trust, because they are playing at a different level.
I know, that's what. So if you have understood the game, that the language,
if we have to act as per their language, then only they will have that trust.
That's what I understand. So if you are doing a business, and in business language, if you say 100, then by default they understand that, oh, this is worth 50 rupees. If that is the language,
that trust also being made out. Otherwise, trust also goes, and they think that I am cheating. The both way doesn't work out. That is the thing.
Correct. I understand. So that is why. That's why I'm telling you. I understood your situation correctly. So if that is the language, then you have to say 100, because the other person, when you say 100, if he understands 50, then when you say 50, he will understand 5. So. So therefore, you have to speak their language. But if
I try to do like that only. I say 100 because in my mind it will be there that it is 50. Correct. I'll settle down to 50. I don't want to cheat them in other way.
Correct. So
is it okay?
If you, that's what, bro. So if you know that if it is worth 50, and if by selling it at 50, I will earn a reasonable margin on it.
I'm not cheating them also, yeah.
Yeah.
The other side also, I'm not cheating them. That also I have
So
in
then,
my mind.
yeah, then you say 100, and if you know that they will understand 50, they will ask for 50, then you give it to them. But you should not say that 150 and try to push it for 75. So that much, see, when it comes to business, Prabhu, we are the best judge, you know. We should only know.
But again, duality will be there, no? Because even if you don't want to straightforward, if
correct. Now, let's say you have a constant customer. The customer has established a personal relationship with you. You have established a personal relationship. You know, two businessmen have developed proper relationship with each other. Then after doing that, you can say, you don't have to tell him 100. When you say 50, he will understand 50.
Correct.
So, but if that relationship has not been established, then
only in few cases it happens, Prabhuji, not in all the cases.
Yeah. So in those few cases, then you can say 50 and give it to him for 50. But in other cases, you may have to say 100, because otherwise you will go in loss. Then you have to give up your business only.
So both these spiritual things and material things is totally, it's a different platform totally.
Not totally different platform, but we have to understand the this thing, na bro. Like say for example, someone goes for an interview. If for the interview for that particular thing, you know, everyone sort of fakes their qualification, or at least bada chada ke matlab they, if it is 10, they will say 100, like that. And the interviewer also knows that everyone who comes and gives this interview, they will be they'll be telling much more than what they're actually qualified for. If in that particular interview you alone go and tell what exactly I'm, you know, only this much I can do, like that, then they will think, Arey, if it is this much, mean, you know, he can do only 1/10 of what he's claiming. So then it will be a problem. So you have to understand that accepted ground rules of that particular thing, so and then act accordingly. So there you have to understand, you know, what is commonly accepted. Okay. So thank you very much for your patient listening. So I don't see any further hands. So we have 1 minute left. So I think we will end our discussion here and try to continue this discussion next Sunday. So thank you very much. Hoping to have your association next week also. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pad ki jai. Manas Siksha ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.